our relations. Welcome to another program, Eagle and Condor. This is Tony Gonzalez, your host today, Sunday, April 5, 2026. And today, my relatives, I have a very special video recorded program with Frank Sterling of KPFA radio station in Berkeley. You may be familiar with him and his voice. But in this video that I have, Frank Sterling is interviewing Frankie Myers, and he's of the Yurok tribe in Northern California. And if I may say, Frank Myers is going to talk to us about the health and well-being of our California waterways and the health of California salmon after the removal there on the Klamath River. As you all may recall, 4 or 5 dams went down in the last 2-3 years. And they also will be discussing AB 2218. It's the Indigenous Water Rights Bill. And Frankie Myers is a Yurok Tribal member, former vice chair of the Yurok Tribal Council, and former Yurok Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. He is a key figure in the dam removal on the Klamath River, and as co-founder of the Klamath Justice Coalition that helped form the Undam The Klamath Campaign. And he is also a co-principal in Fix the World Consulting. And Frankie is currently a member of the Historic California Truth and Healing Council. Now, in this interview by Frank Sterling, keep in mind about the salmon and the rivers that they flow in. And as we have a saying that rivers have memories. Also, my relatives, to say that water is very important. Frankie will be talking about water and the importance of keeping it clean, not just for the salmon, but to provide the nutrients for other relatives along the rivers that rely on clean water. And for you to know that there is a World Water Conference that's going to take place December 2nd through the 4th of this year. And that's going to be at the Arab Emirates and hosted by Senegal. So that's at the UAE. This conference aims to accelerate the implementation of sustainable development goals and the Sustainable Development Goal Principle number 6 of 17 goals that they hope to reach by 2030, the 2030 Agenda Sustainable Development, that is, and for water and sanitation. There's been preliminary meetings held in preparation for that World Conference, but this conference, very important, will be for governments, NGOs, and stakeholders. So we hope to have representatives of AIM West credentialed to participate in that World Conference, my relatives. So keep that in mind as you see this recorded interview by Frank Sterling. And also, as we're moving forward, beginning April 17th through May the 1st, the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. This is the 25th session that will be held in New York City. And AIM West, along with myself as a delegate, and 7-8 others will be among those attending this World Conference. 2,000 to 3,000 Indian peoples of the world, of the 4 sacred colors from the 4 directions, will be attending. I hope that there aren't problems with securing visas, but I'm sure there will be many people are insecure with the ICE enforcement that's going on in the country, but we'll see as we move forward. April 27th at the United Nations Permanent Forum. We'll give you an updated report on that. All right, my relatives, with no further ado, let's see this video recording with Frank Sterling interviewing Frankie Myers.
All right, Miyu Yum Cho Onum and Yupan Namokium to Full Circle. Notion Lovic for joining us tonight. And again, welcoming you to Full Circle. And my heart is good. Thanks for joining us tonight on Full Circle. And coming up next, we're going to be speaking about this precious fresh water system we have here in California, particularly Northern California here, and our precious Delta right here, just a stone's throw from the Delta in my backyard here, the San Joaquin, the Sacramento Delta. And of course, talking about these important waterways, we'll be talking about the health of aquatic species such as salmon and other species in the river, which is kind of a big indicator of how healthy the river is as well. We'll also be taking a look at this from a Native American perspective because we know Native cultures here in the Americas have more traditional, cultural, and spiritual connections to waterways than the people who came and colonized the area, who in most cases saw water as a resource, a commodity to be exploited for capitalism. That could be fishing or overfishing in many cases. Where I'm at right here in Antioch, a lot of industrial uses for water, consuming water, taking it in, cooling for power plants, other factories, or consumption in the power plants in the production of chemicals and other stuff. Sometimes releasing more polluted or warm water into the delta. Also, we get a lot of farm runoff around the deltas, nitrogens and other fertilizers and stuff that's washed into the waterways that could result in toxic algae blooms and all kinds of stuff. I could go on and on and on and talk about this, but I'm not the one that's here to talk about it. So let me bring in my guest, Frankie Myers. And I forgot to ask you, Frankie, about the proper way to introduce you, but I know you are part of Fix the World Consulting. So, and you're also a tribal member. I'll let you introduce yourself as you will, and then we'll talk about what you're doing to help protect the water. He's also here to talk about AB 2218, the Indigenous Water Rights Bill. So we'll talk about that. But introduce yourself, Frankie, and welcome to Full Circle.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super appreciate any opportunity to come and talk to good people and have a conversation around water. Ayukwi, Naknau, Frankie Myers, Mitch, Michuk, Shregon, Kinnikok. I am the principal at Fix the World Consulting. Previously, I was the vice chair for the Yurok tribe, and before that, the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. I was one of the founding members of the Klamath Justice Coalition, the folks that helped put together the Undam The Klamath Campaign, and a current member of the Historic California Truth and Healing Council. Super excited to be on here talking with you all.
Definitely. Well, thank you for that proper introduction. And great news for our listeners that Frankie has a lot of knowledge about all the topics we have liked to follow here on Full Circle: dam removal, the salmon, and of course, we'll talk about the Indigenous Water Rights Bill. But first off, let's talk about Indigenous relationships to the water, especially the Yurok tribe, as you mentioned. And so folks listening can get a sense of where we come from as Indigenous people when we relate to water and how important it is, not just from, I get a smile when I think about it, but just from a hydration standpoint.
Yeah.
But there's more of a spiritual connection, and it's not also only us that consume the water. There's also other creatures. We're human beings, are part of an intricate web of life. We are not the sole proprietors, or we are supposed to be stewards of the land and caretakers. Anyway, so tell us about our waterways, and the indigenous connection to water, and how that's so important and different than just your typical connection to going out and enjoying a day on the river?
Well, I'll say, mini Wachoni, right? Like water is life. It is the connecting force that holds all of our ecosystems together and sustains life here on Earth. I was really fortunate in my childhood. I talk to my wife Molly Myers about this all the time, where we're really fortunate that we grew up right on the river. I grew up on the Yurok Indian Reservation, right in the heart of the Yurok Indian Reservation, spending my summers and winters in the river, up in the mountains, in the creek. I remember when I was younger, we live on the reservation, so we don't have like a big like municipality that provides water. So we maintain our own water system. So getting up and getting in the morning, if you wanted to have hot water and a shower, you had to make sure your own water system works. We spent a lot of time in the winter times, especially in the creek, fixing our intake, making sure the pipe worked, making sure water came down. So from a young age, I was very much made aware that this connection that we have for water and just our own personal being, right? Staying hydrated, being able to cook and to clean and to live life was important. As I grew up and as a fisherman at a young age and going through my teenage years, very much still impassioned by being on the river and fishing, I really started to connect with it in a different way, in a way that was like, oh man, this is like a part of my recreation time. It's where I hang out with my friends. And I began to feel this real love for the river and for our waters in a way that was like, it brought enjoyment and love in my life as I continued to get older. And in 2002, when I was in my early 20s, the Klamath River had a horrific fish kill happen. 100,000 salmon died in the Klamath River due to poor water quality. It was at that moment in my life where I feel like I really started to sense the weight and the importance of having good, clean water for us as a people as a whole. I also really started to lament on these traditional stories that I grew up with, and one of them talks about Rawa, the spirit that lives in the river, had came to Aunt Queen, great Aunt Queen, and told her at the time, took her to the river and showed her the river and showed her this image of the river slowly dying, and then eventually showed her a river that was completely dead and void of any life. And in the story, it tells how saddened she was, and she had thought she had made a mistake. And Rewa had told her that he had shown her this vision so that she would understand, if there ever comes a time in this world when there's no more life in the river, there'll be no more need for people here on Earth. When I was younger hearing that story, it was just one of the many stories that we heard about hunting and fishing and taking care of the land and why it was important. After the 2002 fish kill, we saw how horrible humans had treated the world, and the thought that we could actually kill a river became reality. That story hit, right? Then it was like, oh man, these are true lessons. Like
Can you
this is the core.
Can you talk about and describe the fish kill, what you saw and what it looked like? Because I don't think a lot of people understand. I've looked at the pictures. I talked about the fish kill in the past and other stuff, but can you describe what it looked like when that happened, and what year again was it?
It was 2002, and it was a tragedy, an absolute tragedy. If you could imagine, 100,000 adult salmon lying on the banks of the river. I was working for the Yurok Tribe Fisheries program at the time, and we were going out and doing surveys for over 20 miles, for over 20 miles of river, 20 miles of river. Every single river bar, every creek mouth, every beach had dead fish lying on it. And there was so much death that was coming from the river. It was imminent. You could smell nothing but rotting salmon from the minute you got on the river to the minute that you left. It was visual, It was the sounds that were coming from, all of the animals, and the smell was so incredibly intense. It was traumatic. And I think a lot of us who served on those early fishery crews that were going out and having to try to, count and get an idea of what happened, have a bit of PTSD from it. It was so incredibly immersive. And we're from a culture where salmon is our lifeway. Salmon is what we eat. It's, was a huge part of our economy for individuals on the reservation trying to make it. And to see that many of our sacred salmon dying, like I said, was absolutely a tectonic shift in how we were looking at the world around us, and really activated a lot of us to become impassioned activists to try to fix what was going on. And when we started looking at, what were the causes, what happened to the 2002 fish kill, why did so many fish die, we started to put together a to-do list, right? It was like, okay, if we're going to stop this from happening, let's figure out what happened. And we created like a literal to-do list. And one of them was looking at removing dams to make sure the river is free flowing. We started looking at forest health and really engaging in a different way to forest health. We knew that our stories teach us that fire and water are intricately connected, and the use of fire to manage our forest and our upslope landscapes was a connection to water and to salmon, and really started diving into this whole kind of perspective that we have as Indigenous people, which is completely contrary to the dominant society today, where what we see in American society and in colonial society is this idea that humans are disconnected from the world around us, that somehow we are not a part of the ecosystem. And even more than that, that each piece of the ecosystem is separate from one another, right? So we manage our water resources one way, we manage our timber resources another way, we manage our prairie resources another way, as if they're all individual pieces. But we all know as Indigenous, they're all the same, right? Like, we are a part of the world around us. The water connects all of these pieces of our ecosystem, and every piece of our ecosystem is connected to one another. So if we want to bring and have cold, clean water, we need to have good forests. If you want to have good forest, then we need to include the use of cultural burning into our landscapes. Those are all pieces that work together. And when we started this 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when we'd hear our elders up in Kaduk territory talk about the need to have burns to call salmon home, the idea that we would have fires to cool the river, like, that was wild in this European concept. They couldn't quite grasp it. Now we're seeing more of that come to the forefront of conversations, and people understanding this connection to our ecosystem and how much water is a part of everything we do. And here in California, the fourth largest colony in the world, we are very, very much aware of how important water is to our daily lives, to our economy, to the health of the climate as a whole. And I think from an Indigenous kind of native perspective, from my perspective, water absolutely is life. It is what connects us all. But also in a personal way, I still run and maintain my own personal water system for my family. I still drag my boys out of the bed, my daughter out of the bed, and in the morning, if we don't have water, we hike up the creek and we get it going, right? Because I think those things are important. But that's where I've landed in my life, really seeing the full totalitarian way that our water is a part of us, it's around us, and what's connecting all of these pieces of the ecosystem that allow us to live here on Earth, allow us to survive on this planet and thrive. And traditionally, we understood that. Pre-contact, we knew there was an importance to water. We knew water was a key resource that fed our lives, that fed our economies. And I get frustrated sometimes, honestly, and stop me if I start rambling here, but this idea that water rights or the use of water, a landscape, is something that happened when white people showed up. I'm just like, man, we had economies on this continent, right? Like, we had economies Like we knew what an economic structure was. We had agriculture at a scale so large that white people couldn't even understand it when they saw it because it was so massive and so immersive. And we had trading routes, and we knew these pieces were critical. So that's what we're trying to bring to the conversation today, and that's really for me what what I see is where water lies in my life.
All right. Well, thanks for that beautiful explanation because I feel like a lot of people that are here today that have been born into the U.S. system, the colonial system, even a lot of Native folks, we have lost our traditional contact to water. For us, blessed are we. We turn on the tap and water
Yeah.
flows from it in many cases, but that's not the case in a lot of places. And as we see around the world, there could be destruction of that water system on purpose in war. There
Yeah.
could be drought. Um, and here in United States, where we're welcome and lucky to have this beautiful flowing water system, but has been greatly affected by colonialism. Anyways, I'm going to start rambling myself. That's Frankie Myers. He's safe to say you're a Yurok tribal member, right?
Yes, sir.
And
Proud member, Yurok Tribe.
he's also part of, remind me, the consulting,
Fix the World Consulting.
Fix the World Consulting. And he's bringing us some history about indigenous connections to water, especially up in the area of the Klamath flowing on down. We have the waterway. Like I said, I'm in Antioch. I could walk to the river in under 5 minutes and see the delta. So all these waterways are connected and important to us. And well, let's get some of that update that we talked about before we jumped on the mic here with the folks. Um, Connected to the work that you do that you were talking about is dam removal, and we talked about the salmon kill, which brought an important critical juncture in your life about healthy water, healthy fish, which are a big connection, especially to tribal folks that live along the Klamath and use salmon as sustenance. Um, Give us an update on the dam removal because it's been historic. And I think a lot of people, if you're listening and you're not following the Yurok tribe and Save California Salmon and other folks on social media and haven't watched the deconstruction and the dams and the reconstruction of the flowing river, the seeding of the area around where the lake once was with natural seeds, all this stuff, you're all a part of. So tell us a little bit about, remind folks what got removed and tell us how important that was and the results that you're already seeing. And of course, like I mentioned, sprinkling the seeds, talk about the work that was involved with not just removing the dams, but making sure that when they were removed, that indigenous knowledge was used in the regrowth of the area when you talk about that healthy forest, healthy water type connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just say, we've all been blown away by the success of dam removal, pun intended. We are 2 years out now from the completion of the actual dismantling of the dams. We immediately saw post dam removal, even in year one, an improvement in salmon spawning, over 10,000 salmon within a month of dam removal already were making their way past where the previous dams were, making their way up to territories they hadn't been in 100 years. We're now seeing in the second year of dam removal a demonstrable improvement to water quality throughout the entire system. We're seeing improvements in the estuary. We're seeing improvements right where the dams were. We're seeing improvements in moving of gravel. We're seeing the sedimentation do what it's supposed to do, creating additional habitat, not just for salmon, but for our lamprey as well, our eels, we call them, Pacific lamprey, or eels that we eat. They've seen an increase in production as well. We're seeing a better return come back in salmon this year, not only on the Klamath River, but the Sacramento as well. And as you were talking before, this idea that all of these systems are connected, this is, I think, even further proof that all of these systems are truly connected. When we start to see the health of the Klamath improve, we see those benefits across multiple streams throughout the West Coast, including the Sacramento, Redwood Valley, Rogue, and Umpqua. They're all benefiting from having a healthy Klamath River. And I think the thing that really, for me, when we talk about dam removal, when we talk about the Undam the Klamath campaign, the thing that really like makes my heart sing and feel full of pride and joy is knowing that from the start, this was an Indigenous-led campaign. We talked earlier about the 2002 fish kill, fish die off, and how it, impacted my life. Well, it impacted hundreds of people's lives, and it impacted communities, tribal communities up and down the river: Kaduk, Hoopa, Sanungwe, Chimerico, Klamath tribes, Modoc, Yahustin, Shasta. We all were impacted by that. We all saw that, and it really brought us to this point where all of our tribes came together to work on it. All of the tribes kind of put aside their differences that were brought on us by colonial invasion, and really were leading a movement that started from the people on the river, and the people that really held that traditional ecological knowledge. And you can see that in how we remove the dams early on, even before, wildly enough, this is how much belief we had it was going to happen, even before we had contracts, even before we were fully funded, even before we knew that dam removal was actually going to take place. We had our tribal people up there cultivating seeds from the species that had not only biodiversity impacts, but also cultural impacts, things that we use. We started immediately implementing this idea that in the Americas, the wilderness did not exist. This idea of a wilderness was a European concept that was brought to the Americas. But here in this landscape, every square inch of this continent was managed by Native people. That idea we implemented immediately into this project, where we started thinking about what post-dam removal vegetation would look like. What sort of species we would need to use as Indigenous people, which work together for basket weaving or for gathering or for production for other species, including elk and deer and beavers and bear. So we started looking at it. Really, I think we had this opportunity to look at it from a truly traditionalist perspective, and how we would build an ecosystem back where humans were incorporated into the ecosystem that we hadn't seen anywhere else. I mean, usually when we talk about restorations projects, they're very species specific. We're restoring them for coho, we're restoring them for beaver, restoring them for elk habitat. And this was one of those opportunities where, when we were looking at the revegetation, we were looking at the ecosystem as a whole, which included humans. And that was huge. That was a huge change. When we started building our restoration team, and I'll be honest, honestly, I thought we were really going to restore the landscape. I thought that was the heart of what we were doing. We're here, we're going to restore the ecosystems, we're restoring the landscape. What I saw, what actually we were restoring, when we actually did the work, the heart of the restoration was reconnecting us to the landscape. Like that was, I got it. If like at one point in time, I remember looking out at the crews who were working in the field, and we had all kinds of tribal members, almost 85% tribally led effort in implementation of the revegetation project. And there was all walks of tribal members, folks who had struggled early on in their life, who had maybe gotten mixed up in the wrong things and spent time in jail, folks who had just had a really hard time making it through in life, and maybe were recovering, folks that were young right off the bat, whose college didn't quite work for them. We saw all those people, all those different walks of life being reconnected to the land and their purpose. And it was a shift. It shifted. It didn't only shift them as individual people being restored back to the landscape, but to our communities. We had people who were taking pride, knowing the fact that they were doing the role that their ancestors have done for thousands and thousands of years. And they were, for the first time in 3 generations, able to play that role again. I can't tell you what that impact has on a community where your purpose on life. We name I name my consulting company Fix the World Consulting, and fix the world. That concept in our religion is based on this idea as human beings. Our role on earth is to restore and fix the balance, right? Like, we have a purpose, just like every species has a purpose. We have a purpose. And our purpose here on earth is to fix the world, to bring it into balance, to keep that balance within our ecosystems and our world. Transition in our community that had come through so much adversity, and had, when you watch the 2002 fish kill unfold in front of them, watching our community being able to partake in the purpose, what our religion says we're supposed to do, what our meaningful existence here on this earth. That's where I saw the real restoration of what we were doing in dam removal. It was reconnecting the river and reconnecting us as human beings back to our purpose, and back to the landscape itself. And we've only seen improvements from that. We have now seen the Yurok Tribe Construction Corporation, which is one of the corporations of the Yurok tribe, in collaboration with Karuk and Shasta and Modoc and Yahuskan tribes, actually doing the water quality research, actually doing the in-stream bed alteration work, bringing in large woody debris, actually doing the restoration of the what was previously lake bed. And we've seen nothing but improvements. We're watching young juvenile outmigration in numbers that we haven't seen in years. We are now expected to have one of the largest returns of salmon in the Klamath that we've seen in years. We'll actually be able to have a harvest this year, a subsistence harvest. In the previous years, we have closed down our commercial salmon industry for over a decade now, just because of the low impacts. And we've seen the Pacific Ocean commercial fishery shut down for years and years on end. And although I don't necessarily think we'll open up a commercial season this year, we'll be able to have a subsistence harvest and be able to feel good about it, as well as knowing that whatever fish that come by with the remaining salmon that go up the river will be in excess of any amount of spawners that have gone into these previously cut off areas of the river than ever before. I mean, the hope in the community, there's a buzz on the river, there's a feeling of gratitude for being here, and there's a sense that things are getting better. We are seeing marketable increases in habitat. We're seeing an improvement in our communities. We're seeing a resiliency come back from our salmon and the ecosystem itself. I mean, we're seeing improvements. We have just recently started the Klamath Indigenous Land Trust. We just got back almost 10,000 acres of land, and right where the previous dams were. And so we're seeing positive indications all.
We lost you a little bit at the end. You said you were seeing positive indications already from your dam removal, and it's been tremendous. So thank you for that update. We had a little bit of a breakup, but we got the gist of that one at the end. And again, that's my guest, Frankie Myers from Fix the World Consulting, Yurok Tribal member and a key figure in helping get the dams removed and the reseeding, the regrowth of the free-flowing Klamath back up and running. And like I said, to tremendous, as you said, to tremendous benefit. And one thing I took from that especially was when you were talking about some of the folks that volunteered and helped, they too healed themselves as they helped to heal the land. And it makes me think back to, like, all people have an indigenous past where their people were more connected to the land, whether you're European or not. And it kind of brings me a chuckle, but it makes me say to you all folks that are looking for a connection, think back. You could even think back to the 80s movie with Excalibur when they're chasing the Grail and the spirit is saying, what is the secret of the Grail? And that was the big question. And when he sipped the water out of the grail and it nurtured and rehealed his body after he answered the question, and the answer was that the land and the people are one, they're connected. And
Oh,
yeah, when you said that, it made me think of that, not only just that movie, but how important it is that a healthy land, a healthy people, healthy fish, healthy rivers included in that. Um, well, again, that's Frankie. Oh, I just reintroduced you, but thanks again, Frankie Myers. Let's talk more about like currently what's happening now because we're 2 years heading into 2 years of the second Trump administration. He has his own thoughts on water, what should be done with water, including where you are, where I'm at.
yeah,
Folks know down here in the Delta, we're more concerned about water flows because of the extraction of water north of us to get sent down to Southern California to water those almond fields, amongst other things. But these water flows are what are critical in the health of not only the river, but of course the salmon. As you mentioned, the lamprey or the eels. We have the what do they call the little fish out here that everybody eats? Not the shad, but the other one
smolt.
that they said the
Yeah,
smelt. Yeah, they said the smelt is they found one, I think, in one of the last tests when they should be getting hundreds. And as you talked about the 2002 fish salmon die off in the Klamath, we too here on the
yeah,
Sacramento have had a cut down of something over 90% of
yeah,
some of the previous runs, previous to 25, 24, down like 90% salmon runs. So the health of the water and the salmon runs are inextricably, if I get that word out, linked. And politics and policy play a big role in the
mm,
water flow. There's someone up there with a lever that can pull a lever and send more south, which limits flow to us here.
absolutely.
You had the dams on my traditional tribal lands down south on the Rincon Reservation. I always hear the stories of my dad talking about the big rock where he would jump off the big rock in the river and they would swim. There's no more river because they dammed it and it's just a dry riverbed. And my dad was totally amazed. I could see the joy in his face when we were visiting family a while back in the rainstorm and the river was flowing. And they had this big fence up where they didn't want no one going. He jumped over the fence and he was down there. I got a picture of him from behind where he's just standing and looking back, now as like a 80-year-old man back to his days when the river flowed. And that again is policy. Someone decided that they were going to divert the water from above the reservation and send it to a different direction. So,
Yeah,
tell us about what it's like working with this new administration. I know there's always been struggles with the water here. It doesn't matter. Gavin Newsom still wants to send more water
yeah,
south. So tell us, what are your challenges? What are you doing right now? We could roll into AB 2218. But
yeah.
what's it like working in this administration?
It's wild, man. And we've all seen the news of, Trump's, rhetoric around water in California and talking about, oh, we just need to turn the spigot on to let water flow. And, it's delusional, how he thinks water works here in California and really questions like how, if he even knows how water works anywhere in this country, right? And so having that mentality get involved in California and specifically in the Klamath Basin has really been a struggle. So the last 2 months ago, 3 months ago, the Trump administration through the Bureau of Reclamation came out with a memo, right? Every few years they'll come out with a solicitor's opinion and say different things or set different guidelines for us to work on. And usually they're fairly benign. They're talking about case law and how we'll work together. And even in the his first administration, we had some memos come out that said, hey, this is how we're going to collaborate or this is how we're going to work. This memo coming out from the Bureau of Reclamation, it's called the reassessment memo, now states that the federal government no longer thinks that it has a responsibility to enact the Endangered Species Act, the ESA, the Endangered Species Act, the one piece of legislation that all of us environmental individuals working on conservation in tribes rely on as a backstop. The environmental the Endangered Species Act is a backstop, right? It was a bill put in place to make sure that species that are going endangered, that are about ready to leave this planet forever, are protected. On the Klamath River, we have the coho salmon, which are endangered from going extinct. And so we have what we call ESA flows, or Endangered Species Act flows, that maintain a certain level of water in the river so that fish can swim up to spawn, and their juvenile salmon can swim out to the ocean to grow big. The Trump administration said, you know what, forget all that. Our only obligation is to the irrigation contracts. And we have seen what that now means is that regardless of whether we're going to drain Upper Klamath Lake, which also has endangered species, the Koptu and Chwam short-nosed and long-nosed sucker, that are critical to the Yahuskin and Klamath and Modoc people, who are a staple, who was a staple in their sustainable lifeways, possibly being threatened even more than they already are by lowering lake levels to unprecedented amounts. We've seen the potential for our backstop flows to absolutely go away. They've already broken federal law by lowering river flows below those ESA standards. And above all that, we've had zero communication with our federal partners. It is this idea that they feel like they have no tribal trust responsibility, that they have no obligation to talk to us, even though federal law and state law very clearly mandates that the federal government consult with tribes, that they talk to us about management operations, and they have a legal obligation to follow what the biological opinions say for flow releases for the Klamath and for the Upper Klamath Lake. So it's been this wild, absolute mess. It's been a mess. And in previous years we've had bad, in his last administration, other administrations, we've had bad policy, and we've been able to work through it and talk. There's no communication. It's also really disappointing because some of our agricultural partners over the years that we've built relationships with and really thought about trying to be holistic in our management and incorporating agriculture and irrigation communities into the discussions, we're seeing those hardline, far right individuals push an agenda that a lot of us who are working towards a better future are absolutely opposed to. But with this administration, they're grabbing onto that. And it's this like outlandish kind of idea that dry the river up, dry the lake up. As long as farms have water, that's the only thing that matters. Who cares if salmon die? Who cares if suckers die? Who cares if indigenous people no longer exist? It's been very, very difficult. It's one of the reasons why AB 2218 is so critical. And AB 2218 is, as you mentioned before, it's the Indigenous Water Rights Bill, and we're running this bill through the state of California. In essence, AB 2218 does two things. One, it forces the state of California to acknowledge that the original water rights system that was set into place by California was systemically racist, that it left out any person of color, disproportionately affected Native people, and why we're in these positions on the Sacramento River, on the San Joaquin Delta, up in here on the Klamath, down in Rincon. The reason that we have those struggles, one of the main reasons we have those struggles to maintain flows in our river, is because California did not allow us to participate in the water rights system. So they gave all the water out. They said, you get it, you get it, you get it, you get it. If you're black and you're brown, you get nothing. You get no say in it. And even though that happened 100 years ago, 115 years ago, guess what? That still foundational principle is what our water system works on today. To this very day, that water rights system is still in existence. And those water right holders that benefited from that systemically racially charged process, this is still the same system we're working in. The bill forces the state to acknowledge what they did was wrong. What they did was racist. What they did disproportionately impacted tribal people, but all people of color. And then enacts pieces of the legislation. The second thing is to allow our state partners and agencies to take that into consideration when making policy, to take that in consideration when looking at permitting, to take that in consideration when they're hearing consultation back from tribes again, and be able to enact changes based on that idea. Now we've had a lot of opposition come forward from, folks that you think would usually oppose stuff like this. A lot of the big water users, a lot of big water agencies, the folks who are draining our rivers and sucking our mountains dry, and building these AI data centers and all of that. They're in opposition to this because they've benefited from our genocide, and they benefit from tribes not having water rights, and they benefit from the Latino community, the Black community not having water rights. They're holding all the cards in this, and they don't want any change. They don't even want to recognize that it was systemically racist, or that somehow tribes should have had water rights be a part of the established protocol. What we know, though, is that if we ever want to have a balanced, equitable future, we have to start somewhere. And this bill doesn't upend water rights. It doesn't give any water rights to a specific tribe, or it doesn't delegate the state to unfold the whole process. It just simply says, hey, can we acknowledge the system was systemically racist? And when we make new laws, can we think about that to make sure that we don't perpetuate that same systemic issue that we had in the 1900s? We're super excited about this. We've seen a lot of support from the environmental coming forward. We've seen obviously an outpouring of support from our tribal communities. We really think that this is one of those areas in California where all tribes can stand side by side together. We feel like this is a common ground issue where, regardless of whether you're federally recognized or non-federally recognized, whether you're a casino tribe or a non-casino tribe, whether you're a land-based tribe or not, it has affected all of us. It's affected all of us for environmental reasons. In a lot of areas, it has affected us in our ability to build houses or to continue to build our economic economies. Up here in the north, we have some folks that were trying to expand their business on the reservation that weren't allowed to, or had been kind of pushed back to, because they couldn't get water onto the red. They couldn't get the actual city to bring water that they had used for tens of thousands of years, but because of the system didn't have a water right to it. We need to start addressing these issues at the level that they occur, which is systemically. And AB 2218 is that first step. Let's do that first step.
Again, that's Frankie Myers, Yurok Tribal member, and one of the founders. Well, I don't know what it is, of Fix the World Consulting. Are you the sole founder?
I'm a principal. Me and my wife got it started last year when I got off council. So we worked together, and it's one of these ideas like this. AB 22 is one of the reasons we started this consulting business, to push these issues, to bring capacity to tribes. I encourage anyone who has heard this, if you care about social justice, if you care about racial justice, if you care about having a world for your kids in the future, come out and support AB 2218. It's currently on schedule to be heard in Water Parks and Wildlife at the state capitol on Tuesday, the 24th. We have another hearing coming up in April 14th at ESTM, the Environmental Safety and Toxic Management Committee. Reach out to me, Frankie Myers at fixtheworldconsulting.com. Send me an email. You can check out my website as well. If you want more information, please reach out. Hit me up on Facebook. Let me know what's up. Letters of support from individuals, letters of support from organizations would be super, super helpful. If you've got the time and you're in Sacramento, you want to make the trip down to come to the hearing and show some love and show some solidarity, let me know. Once again, it's Tuesday, the 24th, next Tuesday, March 24th. We're tentatively being proposed to have a hearing in Water Parks and Wildlife Committee. And then again, we'll be in Sacramento, April 14th for the ESTM committee. Both of those hearings, we'd love to have some support from folks show up. If you'd like to write letters, send them in. that would be phenomenal. If you just want to reach out, show some love, and say you're on board, hit me up. Frankie Myers, FrankieMyers at fixtheworldconsulting.com.
All right. Again, that is Frankie Myers, and he's been our special guest today to bring us up to date on many issues. I appreciate it. We got an update on the dam removal, of course, going right along with that, the health of the salmon, the land, and the people, of course, and what it's been like working with this new second Trump administration, Trump 2.0. And with his imaginary big tap that he just likes it. But basically, that's what I feel like it kind of is in the end. They could cut it off like you see at my dad's tribal lands,
Yeah.
totally dry. The river does not flow unless they open the switch and let some water down, like a bi-yearly or whatever they do biannually, to let the basin below fill up for people to pump their water. Whatever they do, they're controlling it. And so what you were hearing was Assembly Bill 2218. That's the Indigenous Water Rights Bill. What about our man up in the Assembly, Ramos? Is it Ramos? Is he going to be on board with this? He usually is on board with tribal.
Hey, we love Assembly Member Ramos, man. He's always leading for the front, and just giving him a shout out. First Native representative of the state legislature. Absolutely. We had talked to him about this bill last year. He's been in full support of it. I think, I can't say enough for what he's done for Indian country around a whole wide array of Native issues. He's got a bill coming up this year as well, to have a paid day off for Native American Day, to get us on some sort of level with the rest of the paid holidays. There's 10 paid holidays in California. He's like, hey, man, can we get Native American Day off? Can we allow our state workers to come and celebrate with the Native peoples? I'd say reach out to his office as well if you want to support that. Much love to Assemblymember Ramos for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I saw that one, his post yesterday when they announced, I believe it was yesterday or the day before they announced getting that day off. That'd be tremendous because I know a lot of people like to participate and come out to the events at the Capitol. It'd be great to have folks be able to just take that day off and join us.
Absolutely. And really share and get educated. I mean, our state workforce does so much for our in working with our tribal communities. The better that we can share with them, the better they understand where we're coming from, the better they can help work with us. So it's really positive, a good thing all the way around for sure.
And as we say goodbye, let me ask you to just kind of look into the future you would want. What would it be? What future would you see if we had indigenous knowledge in control of, management, land management of waterways, important stuff like that, habitat, wetlands? I know there's also kind of an attack on wetlands right now in the environment. What would be your future, for indigenous knowledge and indigenous land management?
Man, that's a great question. I think about this all the time. I think it's one of the things I really dwell on the most in my life is, envisioning what the future would look like if indigenous traditional practices were implemented. And I think we start off with this idea of balance and incorporation of humans into the ecosystem, a future that exists where humans understand that we have a role to play on this earth, and it's to maintain balance in our ecosystem, and that every management decision from water to land to fire was based on the idea of creating balance in this world and an ecosystem that helps support humans, and where humans support the ecosystem. It would be a world where we have integrated traditional cultural fire management practices across the entire landscape, where we maintain our prairies for our large game to run freely, to bring back buffalo, to have our elk herds maintained again. It would be a world where our beaver populations are back to the tens of thousands where they used to be, where they're maintaining green areas that prevent large scale wildfires from having destructive outbursts all over California. I think it would be a water management system that looks at humans and human health, and the same, if not more, than our economic health. I think we live in a world now where we're so out of balance in the future, this implementation of traditional ecological knowledge brings us to this idea of balance, where we're not talking about completely exacerbating humans from the ecosystem. This isn't about doing nothing and letting the world, run free as its own, but it's a management system that's worked for tens of thousands of years, and a management system that incorporates humans into it. I think it allows for free flowing rivers, it allows for fish population, and it allows for agricultural production that supports us as human beings at our core, that actually produces food and no longer puts the priority for toppings in another country over our native species. And I don't think those are crazy principles. I think this idea that we should be producing food for here, for us, for everyone, over producing toppings for others otherwhere. And I don't think that's crazy. I don't think that's nuts. I think this idea that agricultural production should support us, and that our salmon and our steelhead and our lamprey and our sturgeon should be viewed as just important as any agricultural field. And I think that this idea that we push so much that water should be viewed as sacred to everyone is critical.
Definitely great words to end on. Frankie Myers, Yurok Tribal member and member of the consulting firm Fix the World Consulting. You could reach out to him if you're interested in helping out in any sort of these AB 2218 event showing up at the Capitol. It's at Frankie Myers, FrankieMyers at fixtheworldconsulting.com. Shoot him an email and get plugged in. Frankie, we appreciate your wise words today. There's nothing better really than getting a good education on like what's currently happening with our water system and the health. It's been tremendous really to watch. I remember the one video where they showed the actual water bust through for the first time. I was like, yeah, to watch that happen. And then the salmon swimming back up the river for the first time in 100 years, it's momentous and it's historical. And as you said, it's a symbol of what indigenous knowledge can do if implemented on a higher scale. And I remember reading, I believe it was Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz did the Indigenous Peoples History, where she went back and talked about early colonizers' diaries and what they saw in the forest and how the forest was actually managed.
Yeah.
As you said, in some case, it was managed so well to them, it just looked like a huge forest that was just living its life. But they were huge deer farms where they would burn and let that fresh grass come back in this big, huge open area where all the deer would be, and they can come harvest the deer and elk, as you said. So there was a lot of thought and thousands of years of trial and error and learning and growing with the environment to get to where we were before colonization.
Yeah.
with these massive ecosystems that we were woven into, instead of what we're seeing today, where everything's a commodity, everything's for a profit. And we've seen the repercussions of that in the salmon flow and the closing of salmon fisheries. Imagine not being able to just get salmon, as here in California, we're close by the ocean. We got Alaska right up here. We're able to get a lot of fresh salmon, even when the salmon season is not open here. But just imagine not being able to eat that salmon at home, at a restaurant, wherever you do. And we didn't even really get into how important salmon is to ceremony or to and just the water. I mean, I can keep going on and on and on about it, but I do appreciate your knowledge and taking us there, and especially about Assembly Bill 2218. We appreciate you, Frankie, and we hope folks shoot you an email again, Frankie Myers at fixtheworldconsulting.org. And that is how to reach Frankie and get tapped in. Thanks again, Frankie.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Ciao.